Welcome to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast with TJ and Sonny.
Hello and welcome to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. My name is TJ McConaughey, and I am joined, as always, by my best friend and fellow youth worker, Sonny Saltalamacchia. Sonny, what is real?
What is real, TJ, is the wife took the kids to the in-laws. I had the house to myself today, which meant there was a couple of naps, a couple of Netflix shows, a couple of kickstarts and Totino's pizzas, followed by spoonfuls of ice cream. But don't worry, TJ, because I went to the gym this morning and played basketball and rode my bike in the neighborhood for about 45 minutes. So it was all justified.
Is that kind of who you are, Sonny? Is you're kind of one of the guys who, like, if I can work out hard enough, I can stay in front of this thing?
That's why I work out.
Is so that you can just eat whatever you want?
Basically. No, I mean, I'm trying to lose weight and trying to be in shape. I actually got some good compliments recently, so it's paying off, so it's good.
Who's giving
I
you
like my
compliments?
sweets, bro. I like my sweets, man. I like my sweets.
Who's giving you compliments? Send me their address.
One of the personal trainers at the courthouse,
The courthouse. Now, explain to that it's not like you're not going to the courthouse.
No,
It's
the
like
courthouse
a
is
gym.
Athletic Fitness Club. It was actually she's like this old lady, but it was one of the first.
Old lady.
the first-
I usually do pretty well with the old ladies.
It was one of the first trainers I had when I first went back in October, and as I was
yeah?
walking out, she's like, "Hey, you're looking good. What are you doing?"
So whoa. An old lady trainer?
Well, she's like 50.
Oh, okay. So she's in good shape for 50.
I don't know. I'm not going to describe what kind of shape she's in. 50, you weirdo.
She's gonna teach you some stuff.
Trainer. She's a trainer. I don't know. I don't look at her like that.
man.
It's like she's the trainer lady. So
Yeah,
it's cool.
she's a trainer lady.
Yeah. So I was walking out, my head's down. She goes, "Hey, you're looking good." I was like, "Well, thank you. Here's what I'm doing." Yeah.
And you're like, you could be my mom, so we shouldn't be talking like this. Is that right? All right,
mom
Sonny.
had me when she was
Let's.
11.
What are we going to be talking about on the show today? What is our segments?
What are our segments? I forget them.
Question of the week.
Question of the week. Question of the week. QOTW, followed by Tales from the Fringe, followed by Pick or
Flick. Yeah, there it is. But I don't know. I'm done talking about your trainer. I mean, this is a weird thing that you brought up on the show that you kind of just kept going with.
You want me to send you a picture of her?
Yes, please. What's her name? No, just joking. I'm done with all this chit chat. Let's get to the show.
Bonnie.
Her name is Bonnie?
Her name's Bonnie.
Oh, man.
Join the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. And when you subscribe to this podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating. We desperately need your approval.
Question of the week. This is where I ask Sonny a question on the spot. He gives us an answer, and then I give him an answer back. And usually we agree. Sometimes we don't, and it's kind of fun. And so I'm going to go positive today because I want us to stay on the positive trends today. All right. What is something that you see that is positive, like a positive trend in today's youth? When you look at Gen Z, which is who we're working with, what is something, there's a lot of bashing. Let's talk about that. Like, there's a lot of bashing. There's lots of things that you can hate about Gen Z. For me, it's like K-pop. I hate K-pop. I think it's weird. I have a lot of teenage girls who are into K-pop and some boys, and I think, Gen Z, why are you doing this? That's what I think, Okay. But this isn't about bashing on them. It's about looking at something that's in their culture that maybe wasn't in our culture, but they're good at this. And what do you see? And what's a positive thing that is trending in today's youth?
I think it's a double whammy. So the positive is that there's more talk of mental illness. There's more talk, more awareness of it, and it's not demonized, so to say. So they're more accepting of people who are depressed or anxious or something like that. At the same time, I think contagion effect has taken place because we talk about it so much, because it's pushed down so much.
What's contagion effect?
Contagion is where if one person does it, the rest of the world does it. Because of like social media, 13 Reasons Why, glamorizing, so to say, like it's almost like So it's good. It's good that there's more awareness about mental health, but at the same time, I think the opposite effect is taking place, where sometimes kids are taking up an identity with having mental health, even if they don't have mental health. And I think due to the amount of plugged in we are as a country, and I think kids always kind of suffer the most because of their brain development. We're seeing that kids don't have the ability to withstand normal amounts of anxiety and stress. They don't know what to do when they're bored. And therefore, they think they have abnormal amounts of anxiety and stress and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's just normal amounts, and they don't know how to deal with it.
Wow.
So I think it's good that there is awareness about mental health, but at the same time, I think it's leading to more people thinking they have mental health issues when they really don't.
And does this bleed? So, does this mean, like, the way I kind of talk about it is sometimes our explanation for why we are the way we are leads to excuse? Like, is that a good way to frame it up here, or are you talking about something a little different here?
Well, I know you've said that multiple times. Yes, but at the same time, you don't want to criminalize their illness. And I'm going to talk about that during the story time. Story
Okay.
time.
Well, we can wait
but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that's where psychology and counseling and the criminal justice world, and I think that's where everybody collides, is like how much personal accountability is there and how much of the disease concept is there. And really, at the end of the day, I think so much of everything that everybody does comes down to stress management and handling your emotions. And some people are really good at it and some people aren't. And there's people in prison who couldn't handle their emotions and they committed murder because their significant other cheated on them. And there's people who are really successful in business because they can handle their emotions and they're robots and they don't show any weakness and stuff. So I think everything is kind of within that continuum of that, so to say, I mean, isn't that what you kind of see on your end?
No, I like that you take it to that place of regulation. I think that that's the biggest problem in a lot of people, is that some people can regulate when they feel the bad things, and some people can't regulate when they feel the bad things. And and oftentimes we just see it as outcome, right? Like, it's just, here's a bad behavior, fix the bad behavior. But it does go to that place of, being able to regulate what you're feeling. And just because I'm feeling insecure, or just because I'm feeling upset, or just because I'm feeling depressed, what I do with that actually has more bearing on our destination and our destiny than the fact that we're feeling those things,
Yeah.
And I think
that
that
just because you're emotional doesn't give you excuse to do something stupid,
Yeah, and every human feels the same emotions. I mean, to some degree, right? Like, there's not certain personalities that feel a different set of emotions. We all feel about the same set of emotions. It's what we do with those emotions. So, so you're saying the good thing is that they're aware, and they're more aware of the mental illness. So that's a good thing. But then the bad side of that is sometimes they're too aware of the mental illness.
Yeah, I mean, think about when you were growing up. Right? If you were growing up and felt sad, would you go to your best friend and say, "Hey, man, I'm feeling really sad right now"?
No.
Like, you would never do that. I think a lot of these
they would punch you in the junk if you did that stuff in my high school.
Sad. Or when I was growing up, if I was crying, one of my dad's famous lines was, "I'll give you something to cry about. You want something? You want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about." And like, now we're really, really against that and stuff, And so, but I think at the same time the pendulum swung too far, and now we're like allowing it to exist and not do anything about it. And I don't know, it's weird. But I think a lot of what I do is called distress tolerance. And so it's helping kids who are in distress be able to tolerate that. And that's what like DBT is, dialectical behavioral therapy. That's all DBT is helping a kid regulate his emotions to where it doesn't get him in trouble and stuff like that.
I like it.
Think where drug use comes from, or, promiscuity, all that kind of dumb stuff stems from, not being able to handle your stress.
Yep.
Or overeating, all that stuff.
Healthy ways to medicate and unhealthy ways
Obsession
to
of baseball, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got plenty of unhealthy things that society's okay with, so I'm just going to hold on to them then. For me, it's on the social media front. A lot of times when you talk about Gen Z and social media, almost every youth worker who's not Gen Z rolls their eyes and crosses themselves, and just kind of this collective sigh of, I don't know if this generation is going to make it because of social media. I am not afraid of the new platforms, and I've said this on the show before. I'm not afraid of Snapchat, and actually I kind of dig that Gen Z has found new approaches to Snapchat that isn't, or not to Snapchat, but to new approaches to social media that isn't so broadcasty. And I think that's what I like about Snapchat is it tends to be more one-on-one than the open mic that is Facebook.
What about following someone's story? Your story's not private.
No, your story isn't private, but I'm going to get into that too. But I think that one thing I like about it is that the main part of their platform is one-to-one relationship and, talking to each other in a similar way that we talk to each other. And a lot of people, I've said this on the show before, but I'm going to say it again. A lot of people, they look at Snapchat and they go, well, everything gets deleted. Everything goes away. And I'm always like, well, that's kind of the way it is in real life. Like, when we say something on this podcast, it'll stay here forever. But when me and you are just talking, it doesn't stay with us forever. It goes away after the conversation. And then you have to kind of sort of interpret.
I choose to remember what you tell me. I don't know what you do with what I say to you.
No, I try to forget everything you say to me because it just throws my day off if I have to remember all the smack you talk to me. But I'm going to talk about stories now. I think that there's a new generation and a new way of telling stories that they've developed. And I think that's really, really cool and beautiful. And even though I don't understand it all that well, I think it's good. And I think that civilizations rise and fall based on their ability to tell their stories. And so I am excited that there is these features inside of Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat called stories. And it's not things that it's not like doctored up things. It's just kind of what they're doing at the time. And I think that's a good part of life. And I think that if they're telling stories, then they're going to be able to regulate better. I think that telling stories is a good way to regulate life and to sort of interpret life and to know what you're going to do with the emotions that you feel.
I think it is good as long as they can put it down, and as long as when they put it down, they're not reaching for it, and they're okay when they put it down. Because on the flip side of that, and that's what everybody always talks about is the downside of social media is that they don't know how to just sit there and be. Mm-hmm. Like I think it was who was one of those famous philosopher guys, Pascal, I think it was that guy, who said human beings have lost the ability to sit in a room for 30 minutes. And this was, when did he lived almost thousands of years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And look at today, when we're in the grocery store sitting in line, we're reaching for our phones, and earlier today my phone was dead on battery and my iPad was dead on battery, and I was like I had a little stutter, and I'm a grown man, and I got issues with it too and stuff. And so I think those are all good as long as we put them down and we come back to 100% reality.
No, I agree. I agree, and I think that's across the board. That's not just Gen Z. That's a millennial thing. That's my dad, who's not a millennial. Right now, he's a boomer. He's obsessed with certain things on his phone. He's always tucked down in his head. So I think that's across the board that we're all having trouble putting our phones down. And it probably is.
We should make sure it's called "Put Your Phone Down" or something. Put your phone down.
Yeah.
Putyourphonedown.com.
You know what? Actually, Sonny, there was this really amazingly powerful photographs that were taken that I saw, I think, on Reddit. And it was this really great photographer who took a picture of all these people on their phones in different places in their lives.
Yeah, I've seen those.
And then he edits out the phone. And oh my gosh, it just becomes so sad. It's just people looking at, zoned out, looking at their hands. And it's like a couple laying in bed together, they're facing each other.
Not even talking. Yeah, not even talking.
But they're just got blank stares on their faces. And it was like, wow. That was the moment that I realized how profoundly impacting. I mean, we'd been talking about it for a while. I've read, Alone Together. I've read the books and I know the studies and all that stuff. But when I saw those, that's what art does. It just takes you to that different place, and I thought that was incredible stuff. We'll link that. Blog with those photos in it in the social media realm this week, so you guys all can look at your phones and then feel depressed that you're looking at your hand, basically.
So there is no website for putyourphonedown.com, but there is putyourphonedownnow.com.
Okay, so we can jump on that right now.
Putyourphonedownnow.com.
It's kind of a self-defeating business, though. If you get that website.
After you listen to us, putyourphonedown.com. Tales from Pin the Tail on the Donkey. The tales are never accurate on that game, right? It's like you get the game and it's like
you
this
just Michael Scotted that whole thing.
This isn't a donkey tale. You know what I'm saying? Like, this doesn't work. All right. Tales from the Fringe, weekly segment featuring stories from me and TJ's illustrious career of working with you.
Legendary.
I got kind of a crazy story this week. I don't know if you want to go first or not.
You go first.
Okay. I call this story Blood Journal.
Oh gosh.
So,
I don't know if this might not even make the show. I might have to cut this.
This is why people pay attention to the show. Okay. So I got this young girl. She's 16, almost 17. I won't give too much details because I'm currently still working with her. But just really, really, really kind of rough upbringing, a lot of chaos in the home. But no one really knows much about it because she doesn't talk to anybody about it. So I, building up a relationship with her. She come to groups, individual therapy, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, she's on probation, and she ends up getting locked up because she skipped school one day and went around drinking a bunch of beer and all that kind of stuff. And, I think in large part we still have a problem in our country of locking people up who use drugs. And we need to stop that. Anyway, so she gets locked up. So then while she's locked up, she is kind of going downhill, and for somebody who has severe mental health issues, locking them up is kind of the worst thing to do, And so they lock her up, and I've seen some crazy things when kids get locked in detention. Like I've had clients bang their head against the wall and purposely hurt themselves and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so one morning I get an email from her PO, and he forwarded it to me, and they did a room search in her room, and they found her journal. And then he emailed me a picture of her journal. And in her journal was this page where it was like it said misery, and then like it was like her name, and then just a bunch of different kind of drawings and stuff.
Oh man!
And it was all in her own blood.
Oh gosh!
And it was like it was pretty shocking at first to see it. It was just like whoa, and that was pretty intense. This was Monday morning, I think, when I walked into that, and I was just like, holy crap. So then, all week we dealt with it and all that kind of stuff. And she had smuggled in a staple that she got from some of her school paperwork that they put a staple on. They're not supposed to do that, so they kind of messed up there. Yeah. So anyway, so yeah, she freaking had this blood journal. So then, but it was kind of cool. It kind of ended up being kind of cool. So then Wednesday I go in, I'm talking to the judge and the PO and this kind of the team that works with her and stuff. And I'm advocating for her to get the hell out of there because detention is they put her in there to protect her from herself, but at the same time she's hurting herself even worse. So I went and seen her on Tuesday, the day after this incident happened, and she comes in and she's all erratic and kind of crying, and we're kind of processing through it, and then she kind of calms down and she tells me that she just punched the wall before she came in. And this girl's like maybe 110 pounds, little blonde girl, just tiny, And I go, you punched the wall? And she goes, yeah. And then she holds up her hand. And her hand's just like black and blue, just like straight up swollen. I mean, like wow. She socked it.
Dang.
And, and as a therapist, I try never to give a shocked reaction because if you do that, sometimes you give them what they want. And so I was like, okay, well, did that benefit you? Did that give you what you wanted? And anyway, so we had a long conversation. Then we prayed in detention, which is always cool because I know she's a believer and she goes to worship nights and stuff like that. And so I've prayed for her in the middle of school before when I see her at school, and I got to pray for her in detention for the first time. Wow, that's always kind of the cool feeling when she's or a client is on one side of the glass and I'm on the other, and we just kind of pray right there. It always kind of feels kind of neat to be like, in the belly of the beast, so to say, and praying for a kid. And then the next day I advocated for her to get released, and then the judge was kind of him-hawing around it. And then I found out yesterday, that they were going to release her. So we put together a safety plan for her. And this morning she was out to breakfast with one of my counselors, and they said they had a great time. And
great.
So it's cool. So she's going into a place next week, a residential program to help her out and stuff. But it was a trip, man. It was wow. It was crazy. The blood journal.
That is intense. That is intense. Sonny, when you look at somebody like this who's profoundly bad at regulating, let's call it that way, but she has this Christian faith. How do you square those two things?
as far as like how come God's not helping her out with her mental
I think
illness?
that there's some youth pastors, especially people out there who don't get to work with fringe kids very often, and they would look at a kid like this and say, this kid needs Jesus.
Yeah.
And the answer is yes, we all do, you know. Sure. But I think that some youth pastors would say, how is this person even saved when they're that broken and that functional? I wouldn't say that, but how do you square that? So you're praying with her, and she obviously has a faith, but she's punching walls and writing in journals with blood, and you know. Yeah,
and she's still coming back. You know, still knows that God's her savior and stuff. You know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't. I think a long time ago, the facade of once you're a believer or once you're a Christian, you know, your problems dwindle. And I just think it's on a continuum. And I think the more outside the church you go, the more you realize that Jesus calls the broken, and then the broken are saved, and then the broken are, you know, set apart and all that kind of stuff. But you still reap what you sow here, and you still have to go through the pain here. And the promise is future, you know, and the promise is the joy in the middle of the trials and stuff like that. And so this girl, for instance, so there's a diagnosis, mental health diagnosis called borderline personality disorder, and it's on Access 2, and that means that it's like something really intrinsically wrong with the way your brain processes and all that kind of stuff. It's the same kind of same axis that like schizophrenia is on and stuff like that. The problem is you can't diagnose somebody under 18 as having borderline personality disorder. It's one of these weird things where like if they're 17 years old and 363 days, you can't diagnose them with it. On their 18th birthday, you can, because they're saying that the person hasn't lived long enough to really justify that their whole personality is different. And oftentimes, symptoms of borderline personality disorder are present in normal teenage functioning. For instance, the only place in the DSM, which is the Diagnostical Statistical Manual of Diagnosing, that cutting is a symptom is in borderline personality disorder. And, you know, I work with a ton of girls who cut, and often some guys who cut too, but that doesn't mean they qualify for that diagnosis, because the diagnosis recognizes that, you know, kids underage, they don't handle emotions good anyway and stuff. And so a lot of the diagnosis or the symptoms for this is feelings of isolation, difficulty having empathy, unstable relationships, persistent fear of abandonment, anxiety, impulsive decision making, all that kind of stuff, right?
Sounds like a Tuesday for me, but go ahead.
Sounds like a Tuesday, yeah. You got to be careful with the DSM, because if you read it on a bad day, you're like, my life's effed. Anyway. So you know, so she has all these things, and I think there's some people who would say, well, pray him away. Well, you know, yes and no. And then I had an interesting conversation with the guy earlier this week about like faith healing and stuff like that, and how sometimes these faith healers will like, they'll be like, I believe in the power of God to heal people. Well, I believe that too, but on his timing, not our timing, right? Yeah. And so just because you say that prayer doesn't mean it's going to happen today or tomorrow, and that doesn't negate God's power. It negates God's timing, because it's not with your timing, but it doesn't negate his power. Yeah. And so you know, maybe this girl's going through all this, and she's going to find the Lord. She's going to have a really powerful story, and who knows? And maybe she won't. Maybe she'll suffer for 50 years, and then God's time will kick in. I mean, we don't know. And maybe she'll suffer her whole entire life. So I don't know.
It doesn't negate purpose either. I think that's another piece of this, is that oftentimes trial and pain and scars are where we find purpose at. So God has reasons to take us through brokenness. And so I think when we're allowed to call the balls and the strikes, we always would say we will do it differently. But there's a reason why none of us are in that position. And so, I like that answer. Thanks for that.
And then how about this? How about looking at it from the other perspective? Despite trauma in the home, despite trauma with her peers, despite years of cutting where there's like severe marks on her arms, despite actively cutting, despite being in misery, despite all this, she still says, I know that God's out there. I know God loves me.
Yeah.
What the heck? Like, she has more faith than a lot of church kids. You know what I'm saying?
I love that. I love that you flip that, because that's exactly one of the things that I wanted to talk about is, you know, you can't judge a person by where they're at until you know where they came from. You know, I mean, because we're all on this spectrum. C.S. Lewis talked about this, is that you could look at somebody and say, wow, look at this shining example of Christianity. Well, you know, they were born in 2-parent home, suburbia, parents took them to church, pretty mild-mannered personality, and they just had a lot of things swing their way. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to struggle in other ways, but society will look at them and say, wow, great, look at this person. Where it might look at one of these people and say, oh, my goodness, is this, is there even, are they even saved? And that's the problem here, is that we all start in different places. And so you can't judge a person by where they're at right now. And so that's why it's good you bring it up and you say, no, this is still a story of redemption, even though it looks messy. And I think that's what fringe work is. And
maybe her redemption comes 100% in heaven. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think all of our redemption comes 100% in heaven. So, I think we're in denial if we think that we're going to be perfect here.
Yeah, I agree.
Not to isolate my Nazarene friends who listen to this. I mean, hey guys, if you think you can be perfect, go ahead and try. Anyway,
do they think they're perfect?
They have a holiness doctrine, but we're not going to get into all that. So my tale of the fringe, Sonny, is this time when I was. Oh, excuse me. When I was in middle school, we had to wear uniforms. And did you ever have to wear uniforms, Sonny?
Sophomore year, I had to wear a collared shirt. That was about it.
Yeah, so we had to wear uniforms in my middle school, and that meant a white shirt and blue slacks. And white shirts was never a good decision for me. That was like the worst year of my life. That's when I realized I was a slob. I didn't realize how much I used my shirt for a towel until I had to wear a white shirt, and I had Doritos constantly on that thing. Yep. And they decided to paint the school at the same time, so I was always running into a wet painted wall or something like that. So I was a mess. But the one place you were allowed to have a status symbol, the one place you were allowed to have one piece of article of clothing that was yours was your shoes. So you were allowed to buy whatever shoes that you wanted to buy. And so that became the thing. That became how you got status. And I remember I convinced my dad, and my dad was never going to buy me crazy expensive shoes, but I worked out a deal where I was going to go to work with him and pay him off. And he let me buy a pair of $120 penny Hardaways.
Ooh, the pennies.
And actually they started to remake these recently. I saw these on the shelf at Nike the other day. Nice. And so I got these things, and I roll into school, and my friend looks down, and he has that oh, and all my friends look, and then they all kind of join in, and it's like, TJ's got the pennies. And I just felt like king of the world that day. Status, right? For about a week until the Air Penny 2s came out, and my friend got those. And then my status was completely stolen from me, and I was rolling around in antiques, right? And you think I would have learned that lesson that, status shouldn't be found in stuff, because stuff can be taken away. But later on that year, I got my dad to buy me a fresh pair of K-Swisses, right? Which was the other shoe that was big back when I was in middle school. And rolled in, got the applause. Oh, TJ's got the K-Swisses, And I went to gym class that day, and we had to take our shoes off, wear my old pair of shoes, and I came back in. I didn't have like a lock for my locker. Came back in, and my K-Swisses were gone. Ooh. Right? Oh, you know that feeling? Oh, that's the worst feeling ever. Like you got something special, and so my status was stolen.
Now they're not gonna think I'm cool.
And so I'm sitting in the locker room afterwards, and I decide I'm going to look in every locker there to see if someone stole it. And my friend comes in. His name for the purposes will be Michael. And Michael decides to help me try. He says, "Hey, you look in this half, and I'll look in this half." And we look through there, and we can't find any. And I have to go home wearing my old shoes, my old gym shoes. And walking away defeated, I realized I forgot my backpack in the locker room. So I turn around to go get my backpack from the locker room, and I see Michael walking away in the other direction, and he's holding my K-Swiss shoes.
Ooh.
My friend had stolen my shoes. And
maybe he got them back for you.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. But he wasn't running after me or anything like that. And then so I called my other friend up. You know how squads go. Yeah. And we get a squad together, and we're gonna go to Michael's house and confront him. And I knock on the door with my whole crew, and I'm like, Michael, I know you got my K-Swisses. I want them back right now. And he's, just lying straight through his teeth. Like, no, I don't have them. I don't know what you're talking about. I saw you walking away with my shoes. I want them back, getting into this kind of screaming thing. And all the boys are behind me ready to, jump on this person who was our friend, basically. And then his mom comes down. And his mom looks at Michael and says, and realizes what he'd done pretty quick, and she starts to like verbally just scream and cuss at him and telling him to go get me the shoes, and then so he goes and gets the shoes and like hands them back to me in like the most pathetic way possible, and I just realized at this point like the shoes just cost me a friendship, and then this is where the story gets kind of dark. Me and my squad watch as basically. Michael just gets the crap beaten out of him. He gets basically punched in the face by his mom several times, and he's crying and saying he's sorry and he didn't want to do that, and she's just hitting him over and over and over again. And we're kind of all witness to this sort of battery that sort of happens right there, and I'm just standing there as a kid, and my heart's like, just gone, and I'm holding on these shoes, and I look down at these shoes, and I think, these aren't worth it, I should have learned the lesson from the pennies, but these isn't worth it. I just lost a friend, and my friend just got his butt kicked, and I didn't want this, I didn't want this. I mean, I wanted my shoes back, and I wanted Michael to get in trouble, but I realized that maybe Michael, in that moment, Michael was stealing those shoes because Michael had a little bit harder life than I had realized, and I never forget that, man. I'll never forget that idea of status and friendship and all that stuff. And here's the other weird part about that is I just kept wearing my gym shoes until I got new shoes from that. I never wore those shoes again.
Never wore them again.
Because I didn't want Michael to feel bad. That was it. We weren't friends anymore. I just didn't want him to feel bad. And
it's interesting because that goes back to the question you asked earlier when we were talking about mental health stuff. It's why'd Michael steal your shoes? Yeah. Right. And what was it worth it to, I mean, to me, thieving and lying is still the worst, but, motivation, why was that? And did his mom put pressure on him? And yeah, it's just, the whole programming of the human beings is kind of a weird topic and stuff like that,
Yeah. I didn't realize how complicated that was like the day I realized that like evil is complicated. Like right and wrong is not always like, it's obviously wrong.
It's not black and white, but it's not black and white.
But the punishment didn't fit the crime, and it seems like it just caused more pain than anything else. And so, yeah, it was just a weird day, and I think that I remember that oftentimes when I deal with fringe kids, and I realize that some of these kids, they're going to make some stupid mistakes they should not make, but it's usually because they're working out of a place of deprivation. I'm going to call it that. They have a hole inside they're trying to fill up with all sorts of different things, and just like we all are. But yeah, I think that they regulate.
They're playing poker with 2 cards, and you got 5.
Yeah.
We are still listening to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast.
Pick or flick. This is a time where we look at just different topics, and we flick different topics at each other, and the other person has to flick it away or pick it, and sort of like a game of dodgeball, like a metaphorical game of dodgeball where you have to decide whether you're going to dodge something or whether you're going to try to catch it out of the air.
I'm going to resist the quote from dodgeball.
If you can dodge
come on.
All right. Low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit.
We're past that.
But yeah, so here we are.
That's not even the best line of that movie. The best line is where he says, "Nobody makes me bleed my own blood." Then he flips him off as he's driving away.
Oh yeah, there's some good lines in that movie. Also, youth workers, don't show that at an all-nighter. Me and Sonny learned that the hard way.
We tried that.
not appropriate. Anyway, this is just a time for us to look at each other and see where each other are on issues. Sometimes it gets heated. Usually it gets heated, which is what makes it interesting, I think. All right, so why don't you give me your first topic there?
Cussing around kids.
Well, I don't cuss around kids very often. It slips out every once in a while. I'm not really a cusser anyway. I grew up with that being such a normal thing that when I got saved, I wanted to be different. I wanted a different language. I wanted a different verbiage. I wanted to feel completely different. So I kind of abandoned that pretty quick. And it was easy because that's what everyone cared about when you're a teenager. It's like, wow, can you be saved and saying those words, TJ? And
yeah.
And for me, the harder thing to give up was like the jokes, right? Like I could stop saying the F word, but it was harder to give up the inappropriate joking because there's so many times where and even to this day, I'm like, I have such a dirty joke for that, but I have to stop it and say, Holy Spirit, take it away, you know? But yeah, I think I think that there are times with students where I have cussed, not purposely. The times I regret it is when I'm angry. And this has probably happened a total. I've been a youth pastor for 13 years. Probably happened a total of 3 or 4 times. I remember I cussed at Juan once. I talk about Juan a lot of the show.
You guys were driving around in your Jetta?
Yeah, my Jetta, and he donkey kicked the back of my passenger seat, and like broke it off of the thing there, and so my front of my seat was completely torn out of the thing. And I look back and I go, Juan, you just want to break. And I didn't blink it out there.
Yeah.
And that got his attention pretty quick. Like he knew that pastors weren't supposed to cuss. He didn't know not to kick a car, but he knew pastors weren't supposed to cuss. And I had to say I'm sorry later on, which felt so stupid. Like he broke my car, and I have to apologize to him. But there's other times where I've said it and I didn't feel as bad about it because it felt like the right word to use. I think one time I said to a kid that he's just living for crappy things, but I didn't say crappy things, and I meant it. I felt like that the things that he was living for were those things. And I still apologize for it. Cause I in my profession, it's not it's a pretty taboo thing, but I tend not to cuss around kids. So I guess I'm going to flick that. With the caveat that that there has been purposeful times for me. Soft flick.
I would what?
Soft flick.
Soft. A soft nudge. Please
can we just not use this language today, sir?
Can we not use this? There was an article or a research thing a couple years ago by the Independent. I just looked it up again. That showed that there was like 73,000 people who were measured and questioned and all that kind of stuff. And it said people who are cuss are more honest, which, you take forever with that. But
I'm just a dishonest person, I guess.
You're dishonest. I pick it, but I definitely have a caveat as well. I think cussing to cuss is stupid. It shows a low level of vocabulary, so to say, right? I mean, I remember in high school, I was going on this trip once, and this girl I was dating at the time gave me this letter. And it was all the different ways the F word could be used. Because if you think about it, cussing is just supplementing a verb or something like that, right? And so, or a noun sometimes. And it was pretty funny. But I always remember that because it's such an easy, it's easy to do, And I got in trouble. You were there at the camp we did, the rap battle and stuff. And the kids couldn't think of any other words, so they kept saying just cuss words. And I ended up getting a little trouble for that. So I don't cuss to cuss, but I definitely will cuss with kids, but it's with intention, with intentionality, and it's never at kids. It's just like in the conversation with kids. And I've had numerous responses from kids where they say, I trusted you more because you were a professional in a professional setting, and yet you were speaking my language. And I've thought about that a lot in regards to like how we approach kids, because really if you work with kids, you're like a missionary. where you take what adults understand and you have to like filter it down to get a kid's attention with it and stuff like that, you know? So one of the things we always talk about, one of my points I always make with them is the popular phrase, you know, when a kid says F it, right? Like F it, I don't care anymore, you know, or I don't give a F. That's a popular phrase. And I always say, well, you have to complete the sentence. And I say, when you say F it, and they're paying attention because you're speaking their language. And I say, when you say F it is like substituted for your life. And so you're saying F my life. And then when I say, I don't give a F, I say, you got to finish the sentence. You have to say, I don't give a F about my life. And so I use it in the context of purposeful engagement with them to get their attention, but to speak their language. But at the same time, you got to be so careful as an adult because you don't want to be the adult who's like AF, you know, like speaking like a because they'll see that and they'll flush that out. And so like if you cuss, if that's just who you are, then do it, but don't do it to be cool. Do it with intentionality, but at the same time, just don't be fake with it, you know. I've seen so many adults who try to just be super cool guy, and the kids are like, "This guy's a freaking dweeb." So yeah, man. So intentionality is good, but
yeah. It reminds me of that GIF where it's like the old dude dressed up in like skater gear, and it says, "Hello, what's up, fellow kids?" You know, I think
he's wearing Cortezes.
Yeah, it can come off as disingenuous or really, really, really genuine, just depending on who you are and how you use it.
Depending on who you are.
I guess it's a tool. So yours like a soft pick, mine's a soft flick. We're probably more closer on that than we are. But I think we both agree. I never stop a kid, and like if a kid is using just using just the F word, other ones, I'll sit them down afterwards and say, "Hey, come on,
pick your battles." Yeah,
but I'm not gonna isolate a kid because usually a kid who comes from that, that's a way in which they if you start kind of picking on them that way, they feel like unworthy right away. So
but it also lets you know where they're coming from. Yeah, maybe they don't have a big of a vocabulary. Maybe they're not very smart. You know.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's something I definitely think it's something you got to work on because you can't. I mean, you can't have a job and every other word's the F bomb. I mean, literally, it's like there's some gaping wounds here. But it's something I would softly rebuke but I think other youth pastors would probably stop things and rebuke it. Okay. All right. You ready for mine?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's go with okay. YouTube banning certain controversial viewpoints.
It's stupid. It's the most stupidest thing in the world, and actually it'll end up being a good thing because YouTube, Google, Twitter, Facebook, they're all picking sides now. And that is the dumbest thing they can do because now their objectivity is out the window. Yeah. Now everybody knows they're slanted. They're going towards one thing. They just demonetized Steven Crowder. And people are starting to speak out against it. I just watched an interview. David Letterman has that Netflix series, and my next guest is. He had Kanye West on there. And Kanye's talking about it. Charlamagne the God's talking about it. These kind of big guys in the industry are talking about how we can't have a conversation no more because one side will demonize the other. And I just listened to this really great podcast episode on Joe Rogan. I forget the guy's name, but super intelligent guy. And he was talking about this very thing. He was talking about the real people who control the world are the people who write the algorithms for Twitter and for Google and for Facebook. The people who drive the search results, those are the people who control the world. Yeah. And what they're trying to do is slant it to where you are controlled by what happens. And and he made this great analogy. He said, if me and you were talking on the phone and Verizon all of a sudden said, I don't like this conversation, you can't have it. like right? And so that's essentially what they're doing on YouTube. Yeah. They're saying, I don't like this conversation, you can't have it, and it's going to bite them it's going to bite them in the end. But right now it's super annoying and it's not right, but at the same time it's going to lead to something better in the future.
Yeah, I think it's well. First of all, I don't think it's
now, outside of anything illegal. Let me preface that.
Well, I don't think what they're doing is illegal. I mean, the problem here is that they're supposed to be a platform, and they're
Exactly.
acting like a publisher. They're saying,
yeah, they're supposed to be a carrier of information.
Yeah, you're supposed to be something that, you know, the whole idea of social media, the whole idea of these things is like, it's like this perpetual open mic, you know? And if you've ever been to an open mic, like and everyone who's done youth work has been, it gets weird.
Through that.
It gets weird sometimes, you know? But also sometimes it's really amazing. And that's what YouTube is, you know? It's this perpetual open mic, and if people like your stuff, and that's the whole thing about. This is going to get into this. I don't want this to get too political, but I'm going to say this. This is it starts off as true capitalism, right? Like, you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. You know, don't click it, don't upvote it, don't do any of that stuff, and it goes away. But the good stuff rises to the top because it gets upvoted and it gets all that, you know, all that stuff, right? But then we go to a place of there are these elites in society who are saying you're not allowed to like that. And that's where we get to a place in society where I don't believe the government should be in those conversations. Now, I think that the church, you know, should definitely have ways in which they govern and do church and do those things. But I think if you're going to do a society with multiple viewpoints, the second you say you're not allowed to have that viewpoint is the second you've really, I mean, and again, as long as it's not a destructive viewpoint. I mean, like, again, if your viewpoint is I want to go kill people and this is how I'm going to do it, then obviously you need to go get arrested and held and all that stuff. But at the same time, if it's
just an opinion about something, you can't have an opinion no more.
Yeah.
That's where they're messing up.
And that's what I think this is what the next place they're going to come for, Sonny, is the rappers. Because how could honestly, like, some of these rappers and what they're rapping about, dude, I mean, it's 10 times worse than anything Steven Crowder has said.
Yeah, but you're missing the point. Who's arguing? If you really look at it, who's arguing?
I don't know.
It's typically non-minority college-educated people against non-minority uneducated high school people. That's really who's arguing right now. Yeah. Right? And they've classified all the Trump supporters as the non-educated, you know, rednecks, whatever. And then you have these elite blue or white collar, you know, the elite schools. They're so woke, and so it's like it's a bunch of white people arguing amongst each other about how to help the oppressed people, and that's it. And so, like, really, what are we arguing about here, right? It's virtual signaling at its finest.
It totally is.
Look at me.
It totally is. And as somebody who's gotten shadow banned, I can tell you this: let's free up these suckers. You know, let's let the good stuff rise to the top, right? Let the good stuff rise to the top. I mean, here's the thing:
Crowder, huh?
Here's the thing: is I'm not Crowder. I'm not getting millions and millions of views. But what I did get is I got one video with 100,000 views on it, right? And about 20,000 likes on it. And somebody saw that, said this is a Christian viewpoint, and we don't want Christian viewpoints on this platform. And here's the thing: they're a private business, and they're allowed to make that decision.
They're allowed to do that.
But at the end of the day, like, you got to decide if you're a platform or a publisher, because if you are a publisher, then there's certain laws you have to live by, and if you're a platform, you don't have to live by those laws. Anyway, moving on. What's your one?
Okay. Making fun of the kids you work with. Like I'm talking, not hanging out with them, like poking fun at them. I mean, like, in private with other workers, other volunteers, making fun of them.
So wait. So not to their face.
Yes, having jokes at their expense when they're not around.
I'm gonna flick that. I'm gonna flick it because I call kids dummies all the time. It's like a word of endearment, but I call them to their face, right? Like, that's like
word of endearment. What does endearment mean?
Endearment. Sorry,
okay. Dummy.
Endearment. Yeah, that's a good place for it.
I call kids dummy, but it's a form of endearment.
That might be the best thing I've said on this podcast.
It's dummy, but it's a form of endearment.
Well, I like dummy because it makes you sound like a dummy. That's one of my favorite. It's like, it's the perfect word. But anyway,
dummy.
I think it easily turns into gossip. I think it's funny to joke about situations that we all kind of find ourselves in, and the way in which students interact with things. I think that for the most part, when it's individualized and it's like aimed at a person and they're not in the room, I would say that you're in territory you probably shouldn't be at. And it's like edge stuff, right? It's like some of it's not going to be that bad, but it's so easy to step over the line and end up in a place where you're bad. And that stuff comes back. Oftentimes it comes back because all of a sudden you hear later on, hey, I heard you were talking something about me. And it's just, it's not worth it, in my opinion, right? It's not worth it. I think joke about the situation, joke about the type of kid, but don't joke about a kid specifically with a name. And I think sometimes when you do that too, like, and I'm not going to say I don't do it. I don't think we should endorse it. And I think we should shy away from it.
Yeah, I flick it 100% because, and you touched on it, it's a slippery slope because then it can fog your judgment and fog how you interact with that kid. And you can start thinking, well, that kid's just a dummy, or that kid's just a this, or that kid's just from that side of town, so whatever. And you start taking away from who that kid could be.
Yeah.
And you know, from anytime like the Christian area and psychology line up, I always think that's a pretty good thing. And so in the psychology realm, they have a strength-based approach where you teach and you talk to the kids as if who they could be. And Jesus, that was his 100% of his ministry. He wanted to preach and talk to people and treated people as who they could be, you know. And so I think those two things are that one concept is huge. And so if you treat a kid like he's just some castaway, then they'll always be the castaway. But if you treat a kid like they could be something, that's everything for them. But if behind the scenes you're making fun of them and all that kind of stuff, it leads to that not being able to see them in the future. And also, you know, if you're in a position of leadership and you have staff and they hear you talk about that, but then on the same hand you're going to say I love these kids, like that's kind of a mixed message, you know. And if you have a fresh staff or a fresh intern and they see you making fun of the kids you're serving, that's a pretty big mixed message, and I don't think that's the message you want to be sending. Yeah.
And I think the other thing about that is you're going to, whereas, you know, you might have lost your ability to affect a kid because it's just, you know, familiarity breeds contempt. Yeah. But if you're constantly making fun of them behind their back to other youth leaders, you're also robbing them of a chance that they could have with another youth leader who might just write them off as well. And so,
because they have a preconceived idea of who that kid is.
Yeah, it's double bad. It doesn't do anybody any good. So, yeah, I'm going to flick that. Okay, I got one more here.
Test.
Church greeting time.
Oh, it's the worst. That's the one time where I will purposely pull out my phone and pretend I'm more interested in anything. Now, at the same time, I'm jaded because I work with people all day, and I'm at the point now in my career where if I don't already know you, I don't want to get to know you because I got enough relationships in my life. I pour out myself enough. I'm just done. So I'm not interested in meeting anybody, especially some fake 3-minute conversation of, hi, how's it going? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, man, it's the worst. So if I'm not in the bathroom, my head's buried in my phone.
Church greeting time.
I don't even have to go to the bathroom half the time, but I'm going to go in there anyway because it looks like I got something to do.
I think it's the worst for both types of people. Introverts and extroverts, I think, hate this time. Because first of all, if you're a true extrovert, because I am a true extrovert, you want to actually get into conversations with people. You don't want to just have this little, okay, let's go back to watching up here. You know, it feels so contrived. It feels kind of phony. It's
100% phony.
Yeah.
100% phony.
And I think, and if you're an introvert, like my friend Sonny, it's like, I don't want to know.
But I'm an introvert extrovert because I love people. I mean, I work with people every day.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm dealing with blood journals, okay? I don't got time to deal with you for 3 minutes on Sunday. I'm sorry. I got to save my emotional energy for the blood journals.
But at the same time, like, you're kind of what they call like a professional introvert. Like, you probably started off as a true extrovert, but working with people, now you need more alone time.
Yeah,
you crave it a lot more. And you're probably a little more borderline between those two things anyway. I don't want to say borderline because of what you explained earlier in the program. But yeah, no, I agree. I think,
So why do we still do it? The church hasn't found any other way. Like, why do they still do it? Do you guys do it at your church?
Yeah, we totally do it. We do it for 20 seconds, dude. It's like literally 20 seconds long.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, and you know, we always ask goofy questions like, what's your what's your favorite thing about summer? It's not like, hey, meet and greet people. It's like, give somebody.
That's a little better because at least you make fun of it.
Yeah, you at least make fun of it. But, you know, like at a youth group, I always just tell people to give a high five to somebody that they know. And then I tell them, hey, the person you avoided on that, give them a fist bump. And then we move on. I don't know. I don't know why we still do it.
Oh, so
I
you're
don't like
perpetuating it too, huh?
I don't know. I keep. I guess
at our church they do like a 7-minute time where you take your kids to the kids thing and you come back and have a little snack. So it's 7 minutes. It's a little better, but it's still annoying. I don't go to church to talk to people.
Sonny. Oh, the things that are said on this episode. Okay, great. Well, there's our pick and flicks for the week. All right, guys, thank you for joining us on the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. If we said anything that offended you, come onto our Facebook and just tell us exactly how we're wrong. We would love you to get into an internet debate with us. We'll take that traffic. And if Sonny specifically said something that you didn't like today, I'm going to post his personal phone number in the show notes, and so you can just text.
You can change my phone number.
you can angry text him throughout the week. But yeah, guys, we want to hear from you throughout the week, so do join us on Instagram and Facebook, and we would we'd love to hear from you guys. Sonny, you got anything else you want to add?
Nope.
All right, this is the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. Don't believe anything my dad